Okay, you're good.
Okay, so I'm going to start reading at 44. It says, in the same way, both Sarikara and Nirvikara Samadhi, which are practiced upon subtle objects, are explained. In the previous two sutras, we looked at Savitarka and Nirvitarka.
What's the matter?
There are two other kinds of samadhis which are more or less
Sleep. Why are you going to sleep late?
but which have the finer elements for their objects. And then I'll read 45. The subtlety of possible objects of concentration ends only at the undefinable. In other words, the finer objects, tanmantras, chitta, and ego, ultimately end in primal force called the prakriti, or the primordial basic substance in its unmanifested condition. In that condition, there is no name, no form, and no thought, only the fully balanced, tranquil, unmanifested state of nature. So the mind has the power to go to the very root of the unmanifested nature. Do you guys want to talk about that before moving into 46? Can you guys recap me what you talked about yesterday? Anybody?
Yeah, yesterday we were talking about how this is the part where he's giving us like tips to how to deepen the practice. So if I use the example, like when you finally learn how to do a push-up correctly, now there's like all these special push-ups. Now there's like the one-arm diamond push-up, the military push-up, and there are other things to play with. So I thought what he meant in 43 was to move from the knower, knowable, and knowledge. And I'm thinking that he's saying you can move. So once you can be fully absorbed in the object, once you reach that first level of samadhi where you fully absorb something and you're starting to practice moving beyond it, that you go sort of like back and forth playing. So when he says, when the subconscious is well purified of memories regarding the object of contemplation, the mind appears to lose its own identity, and the object alone shines forth. This is Nirvitarka Samadhi, the samadhi beyond examination. So you start to move your consciousness beyond the thing. He's already talked about this previously, but he gave it to us all in like one gulp. And I feel like here he's giving it to us, okay, a little bit at a time. Like in this one, move beyond. I don't know. We were hoping we would have insight.
Okay, so I think in 45, it's basically explaining the state of samadhi when you are completely separated from the prakriti. Does that make sense? In that condition, there is no name, no form, and no thought, only the fully balanced, tranquil state of nature. So in that state, it's completely devoid of thought and naming and identification of objects. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does
Yes.
to me. Not that I've gone there, but I can catch a gist of what's being explained, I think.
Okay. So I'm going to read 46 now. In there. So 46 says, Eva Sabija Samadhi. Each of the above kinds of samadhi are sabija, with seed, which could bring one back into bondage or mental disturbance. In all these samadhis, the goal has not yet been reached. Even after acquiring all these states, you can come back as an ordinary person because the impressions are still there. All your desires are still in the seen form, not completely fried because you have not completely purified the mind. That is why you should make the mind pure before you practice deep meditation. Blessed are the pure, they shall see God. That does not mean the impure cannot see God. If they work on it, they can, but their God will appear as a demon to them because of their impurity. Their vision is colored. They can't see God's pure nature. They see God from the wrong angle. If you write God as God and read it from the right angle, it is God. Read it from the wrong angle, Dog, it is dog. The impure mind reads it from the wrong angle. So the mind must be pure. It is all well and good to learn from the different methods of meditation and the experiences that could come to you. But if you are really serious about this business and really want to go deep into meditation, take care to have a clean mind. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. Even the so-called scientific discoveries and inventions are a result of concentration and meditation. The scientists meditated on the material side, on the gross elements, and found out many things, created many machines, and were all enjoying the benefits. They went deeper and deeper and ultimately went into the atom itself. It's all meditation. They're yogis, no doubt. They were able to plumb the secrets of the atom, but what is happening now with those secrets? It has become a terrifying force. Is there anything wrong with the atomic force? Nothing. We can't blame it, nor need we condemn or stop the atomic research. What is to be condemned? The mind of the people using those forces. That is why the entire world is terrified. If we are to go into the secrets of life and the universe and gain control over them, we should have pure minds to make the proper use of them. Otherwise, we will bring destruction on the entire humanity. The purification of the mind is very necessary. So I really like the sutra because my impression of it anyway is that the word, you can see the word bija in this sutra. Bija means seed, but it also means, there are different meanings for it when it's used in the Sanskrit, but it usually means seed, but also it's a symbol for transformation and like rebirth. So I really like this one because it puts you into the frame of mind that samadhi is not your goal, that you can achieve samadhi, but samadhi is just the seed of the goal. So I think it means that once you, like it says right in the beginning, you can achieve all these states, but you can come back as an ordinary person because the impressions are still there. So being in samadhi or any of these states of samadhi doesn't imply that the impressions are gone forever. You might reach a state of your awareness in your meditation practice where you do experience that complete engulfment or engrossment in the divine, but it's just a seed for where your spirit is traveling to, and that the only thing that you can do is to really keep going in your meditation practice. It's not that once you've reached the goal of samadhi, like now you're done and that's it. And I mean, so he talks about purifying the mind. So in the other sutras, the ones before this, he gives several methods for purifying the mind, concentrating on different objects, concentrating on the removal of your samskaras from those objects, and he gives you different specific methods for the mind purification. But I think what he's saying in the sutra is that without those practices of constantly purifying the mind, that you can easily fall back into the bondage of your thoughts, into your mental disturbance. And I think I love the analogy that he makes here with the atom and how it's basically intense concentration and meditation upon the power of the atom and what it could do, that put us in contact with, atomic power. But in the wrong hands, in an impure state, what is being done with that power? Not the right things. And I think even in yoga, the same can be said, that they can be people who have achieved samadhi, or they they have reached those states of awareness. And I think, when we think of some of the stories that are coming out lately, especially with certain yogis and stuff like that, how they're abusing their power, like even in these situations, that is a very harsh truth, that you can come into contact with this power, but what you do with it is what matters. And I think even, it kind of reminds me of like the law of attraction a little bit, because it does assume that just because a person has acquired a certain ability or a certain power, it doesn't mean that they know what to do with it. And then I think we see that, in politics all the time. I think we see that in many different areas of our lives. But I think we don't often think about it in terms of yoga and meditation. And, when you think samadhi, or you think an enlightened person, you wouldn't think of somebody who is using their power for the wrong thing. But then we see there are definitely situations where that is true. There are definitely situations with yogis who, spend all their time, or spend a large amount of time, doing tricks and manipulating matter and doing stuff like that, because they've learned how to achieve this state of complete control over the prakriti and what goes on in the physical world. But that doesn't mean that you're done and you figured it out and that's it. So what do you guys think about that?
It was really helpful, Ashley. For me, it was.
Very helpful.
We were like a bunch of kindergarteners yesterday trying to analyze like a graduate program, and we were doing good. I thought we had like a really fun conversation, but I was like, where's the teacher? But you just mentioning some scars really put things, I think that was a word that wasn't grasping for me yesterday, and that word is helping me understand the last 3 sutras together with the concentration.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Adriana.
It's actually funny that you mention that people, some yogis start doing tricks and manipulating matter. And just yesterday, I was watching a video with Charlemagne the God and Deepak Chopra. And Deepak Chopra was talking about that time in the music video with Michael Jackson. I don't know if it was a music video because I only saw like a screenshot, but Deepak Chopra was levitating behind Michael Jackson, and it was caught on film or video or photo, whatever. And Charlemagne the God is like, do you still do these things? And Deepak Chopra was like, well, I no longer do it in front of people, because that's not the point. The fact that I can do this doesn't, it doesn't really mean anything, but we can get caught up in this thing, the fact that he can, and he says he's not really levitating, that he's hopping, that he's reached the level where he can hop. So just with his consciousness, he like lifts himself off the ground and then comes back down. I know. But you can see it in a photo, and apparently this is like some very famous occurrence that happened a long time ago when Michael Jackson was still alive. It was Deepak Chopra helped him write that song. I forget what song it was right now, but it's one of the peace ones about the world and love. So this conversation is really helpful. It's helpful when you talk to someone who has like context, because yeah, I was just like, I think he's talking about something that I haven't really seen yet, which is why I don't get it. So yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of examples like that. Like with the levitating thing, I know for a fact that is real. Like I've had family members who have seen this happen, and there are people who otherwise they're not very imaginative. So I have a hard time believing that it's not. But it's just like, yeah, there are so many in India specifically. There are so many yogis who dedicate their whole life to this practice and to these practices, and then at the end of the day, they're pretty much just like sitting outside, like doing party tricks all day. And I don't know that that's the point, or I think that this is insinuating that that's not the point.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that it's just a seed, because have you guys ever heard of the bija mantras?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, so they're like the seed mantras that coordinate with each of your chakras, right? So a bija, if you think about it as a seed, and enlightenment just being the seed, it does beg the question, like, what comes after that? And I think, or what blooms out of that, I want to say. Because, I think a lot of people go into this thinking that like achieving these states of samadhi is the end goal, and then once you've done that, then you're a realized being, and that your samskaras and everything from every impression that has ever been on you doesn't have a hold anymore, but it does. And in fact, I think doing the party tricks and the levitating, like stuff like that, those are things that can be viewed as rooted in our samskaras. If you think that you need to achieve something, or if you think that you need to assert your power in a certain way, if it's like the work of your ego that's making you do these things. But that, I also think it's just like, so if you think of bija, the word seed, to mean like a transformation, so that when you achieve a state of samadhi for the first time or any time, that you are just initiating a transformation within yourself. That this is just how it starts on a really deeper level.
Ashley, the way you put it made me think of, it's like this could be a whole other level, but it could also be on a very simple everyday level. And like, to me, that's my yoga. Because it's like all these little moments. And when you think, where it says keeping the mind clear or pure, if you think about like when we get angry or pissed off at someone, right? You can try to do anything, and that person is going about their day, and you're the one stuck, and you can't, like, if you stay stuck in that place where you can't burn it off and let it go, you're stuck. Like there's nothing, you try to go to sleep, you're thinking about that. You wake up in the morning, you're thinking about that. Like whatever else you're doing, you're thinking about that. And that to me is a very simple example of purifying the mind. Like whatever it could be. It doesn't mean necessarily just sitting down and trying to sit in quiet. Like these things that happen, and it comes back, for me, it comes back to awareness. Like knowing and noticing that these things are coming up, so you can process through it, so you can let it go, so you can keep your mind pure and your heart pure.
I like what you said, burn it off. Like, I love that idea that the things that are in your consciousness that are impure in your mind, that you can burn them off. I'm a fire sign, so I like to, like, around my moon rituals, like, burn stuff, and, like, I love the idea of just, like, burning. But but I think in this context, that's, like, absolutely right, because yeah, I think you said it perfectly.
Because we all like, I'm a completely different person from 10 years ago, or even less, but let's say a decade ago, right? Like when stuff happened, the way I reacted and I would feel so entitled of being angry or being whatever I was being. And the same stuff still happens. Like this stuff still comes up, but it's a whole different way of looking at it, a whole different level of awareness. And that's the practice that got me here.
Yeah.
And I think we can all relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I was just talking to one of my friends the other day, and we were talking about how just as teenagers, how we were so angry. She was telling me that she was watching some old videos of herself as a teenager, and she was like horrified by just like basically how she was just an angry person. But of course, you know, we're teenagers going through our own things, but it's exactly that. It's the perceptions that you have, the samskaras that you have, the impressions that you have on your mind, if you're not working to constantly purify them, that they still exist there. So I like the idea, the example you gave of being angry at someone. So you take yourself and another person. The other person is the object, and you're angry at them. So that is your own veil of anger that is over your eyes, tainting the way that you see this person. Anything that they do is wrong because you're angry at them. And that's what I think this sutra is saying too. A person with an impure mind cannot see God. So it's not that you can't, you know, see, you know, the physical manifestation of God in front of your face, but it's that you're disconnected from a pure and absorbed state of being with that object. Like it's still an object, and it's still, your perception of it is still tainted by your samskaras because your mind is impure, because you have not burned the anger away. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with the practices that he talks about concentrating, about finding different things, and I think it was one of the previous sutras before this where he says, or maybe it's after this, actually, I might be ahead of myself. Actually, I think it's before. But he basically, when he says that you can choose anything to concentrate on to bring your mind back to God, because those associations are different for everyone. And different practices, you know, certain practices won't work for certain people, and certain practices will work for certain people. Like bhakti is a big practice that a lot of people use to bring their consciousness in direct, to purify. Like bhakti and singing and music is one of the many practices that they recommend for purifying the mind, because you immerse yourself in that feeling, that like God feeling. And then your mind is purified, and therefore your perceptions of things are purified. Therefore, you're more likely to be able to be fully immersed in the divine consciousness of everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for me it does.
Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I think for me, it's like I just because the way where I was just my raised, like I just have to keep reminding myself I'm such a beginner. Like I'm still like the seed is still like so small. And like the other book I'm reading with the 14 lessons where it was talking about like these supernatural powers and like the levitating and all this bad stuff, there's so much warning there, because I guess once you really get to the powers, it is so powerful. And I'm like, what are they talking about? But I think for some of us, like our yoga community, not just at Rev, but just in the US, like we think we're practicing so much because we're spending 90 minutes on the mat, but like these people are spending their entire lives doing this. And it's just, I keep thinking like, okay, I do one chaturanga for the first time in my life, and then I think I'm going to master every arm balance just because I did it one time. Like it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of dedication. This is just all swirling. All these thoughts are just swirling through my head.
It is real dedication. If you think about trying to purify your mind, that's constant monitoring and work all the time. That's 24 work other than when you're sleeping. So
it's like even not, it's like for me, I'm like, that's like having the cleanest diet ever, like no coffee, like no bad thoughts, no, like I don't even think I could do 1 day or 1 hour. I don't think I could do.
Yeah. But I think the sutra emphasizes the importance of the beginner's mindset in these
Yeah.
because it really is so easy for people who do spend their whole lives doing this to think that once you get there that you're done. But that's not what it is, and that's not what this practice is supposed to be for anyone. For people in the US or people who live in the Himalayas, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. But even like from my own physical practice, like I have crow pose. That doesn't mean every time I have crow pose, I need to do crow pose. Like I can still stay in my squat pose. Like just because and not that anyone masters any pose, but just because you like create the pose doesn't mean you have to do it every time. And there's no like, it's always like just coming back to that beginner mindset.
Yeah, it's a lot about the proper applications of the power that you assume. Like just because you have a certain amount of power doesn't mean you should use it, or doesn't mean that you
Exactly.
that you should take certain action. That's what I think he's saying with the atomic bomb metaphor, is that it's the same power, and you can't be mad at the power for existing or for being there or for being accessible. But in the wrong hands, in an unpure state, it can be completely destructive. And I also so Buddhism, Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, how they came out of Hinduism, I think was a lot of because of this, because there were so many yogis who were getting so obsessed about these practices and achieving these states and doing, being aesthetics and doing all this like stuff. And I think that there was a large movement in India historically that of people who didn't identify spiritually with that anymore. And they kind of broke off into their own thing where they were just trying to be connected and not trying to perform something or something like that. So I always think that's very interesting too, because when you study Buddhism, these extra layers of like be careful of the power you might get are a little bit less warning on them. I always think that's really interesting, especially with, people who spend their whole lives, like you were saying, Pam, doing this stuff. It's just like that. Sometimes the dedication to it can be the thing that puts you apart from it in a weird way.
It's like an attachment to the dedication.
Yeah, an attachment to an end goal.
It's like an obsession.
And it does become that way very easily.
Doesn't it feel like anytime you're working towards something though, that like all of a sudden like you step away from it from like 2 weeks and then you come back and you're like it's there.
Yeah.
Like so sometimes like letting go of something too is more advanced, like more, I can't think of it.
Every hard pose or more advanced shape or anything that I've ever gotten into, it never happened when I was really trying.
Yeah,
never. Like the first time I was able to kick up in forearm, I was in Amanda's class when she still taught the Friday class that I now teach. And Stephanie Millen was next to me, and we all, like both of us grunt on the mat when it gets rough. So we used to laugh like throughout the class. And I remember going, like Amanda said something about kicking, and I go, like, no, like holding. And I go, yeah, right, I can't even kick. And we're both laughing, and I kick, and I just went up. But every time I really tried, it just wouldn't happen.
But
like when I was trying so hard in my head, like that's what I was fixated on, like really getting up and like the need to like get in there. It didn't happen. And the first time it happened, I was goofing, not expecting anything.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the perfect example of, there's a sutra in here that talks about, is it this, or anyway, like something about like showing up and doing our work without, yeah, it's the whole sutra about attachments and not being attached to the result of our work, something like that. I don't remember anything in like word to word. So I remember that moment thinking, there it is.
Yeah, and I think
It kind of reminds me of like when you first learn to play cards, and there's like all these strategies when you're playing cards and like all this technique, and there's like that beginner's luck where you first sit down to the table to play and they're trying to explain to you something, just like they're trying to explain just the regular rules of the game, but then suddenly you win the game and you do a move that people have been trying to be high about, but you do it because you have this beginner mindset. You don't know, you just are starting to learn to play the game, and it's like, this very advanced thing happens. The other players who are advanced realize that it's an advanced thing that's just happened, but you're just the beginner. You're just trying to play the game. So I like this idea that the beginner can be hopeful, that like this is attainable. Like I can experience bliss. And like I was saying to Pam yesterday, like I love how much faith Patanjali has in us. Like he's like, let me give you instructions on how to like defy reality, because I kind of know you can do it. And this is very, it's very uplifting. It's very encouraging that Patanjali believes in us this way.
I know sometimes it can be rough to keep up with his teachings if you feel so far apart from them and like, this is something I will never get to. It's kind of like depressing.
I don't ever feel like that so far. I understand people do, but I like what Jackie said, like a few sutras ago. It's like, she's just happy. We're just happy. I'm just happy where I am, but I'm happy to learn this stuff. I don't need to achieve it. But that was a great analogy, Adriana.
Yeah, that beginner's luck is definitely very real. Like it's as soon as you don't really care that much about winning that you somehow have better odds at winning.
When you just want to have fun, you'll win.
Yeah, and I think this is similar to what this is saying. Definitely. All right, so we move to some pranayama now?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'll mute everyone.
All right. So let's start doing some alternate nostril breathing. Exhaling everything out. And taking the pointer fingers to the third eye or into your hand. Closing off the right nostril and taking a deep inhale through the left. Holding the left. Exhaling through the right. Inhaling through the right. And exhaling through the left. Inhaling through the left. Exhaling through the right. Inhaling through the right. Exhaling through the left. Inhaling through the left. And exhaling through the right. Inhaling through the right. And exhaling through the left. Doing that on your own time for a few more minutes before settling into your meditation. starting to come back into the room. You're blinking the eyes open, taking a nice stretch. Thank you guys.
Thank you,